Hi, this is Miss Rudd. Today we're going to be learning about circle graphs. If you are KVA, go ahead and print out the notes off of Canvas. If you do not have a printer, you can follow along in your ISN. Also, remember, if I'm going too fast, please pause the video and then push play when you're ready to continue. So, a graph that displays data as part of a whole is called a circle graph. In a circle graph, the percents add up to 100% since the entire circle represents the whole. You can solve problems using data represented in a circle graph, including part-to-whole comparisons and equivalence. So whenever you're solving problems for a circle graph, you can use proportions, and remember, we can set those up by doing part over whole equals percent over 100. So let's look at our first example. Here it says a total of 250 students were surveyed. How many more total students were surveyed than prefer pepperoni? So there's two ways that we could do this. First, we could determine, okay, well, if you look here, pepperoni is 30%. So first we could determine 30% of 250 and then subtract whatever our answer is from 250. Or we could subtract 30% from 100 and get 70 and then determine 70% of 250. So we're going to do both ways, and then you get to pick the way that you prefer. Oops. All right. So method one. So if we are determining 30% of 250, so 30% is our percent. Oops. So we're trying to find our part. Our percent is 30, and we can set that over 100. So if you notice, we cannot easily go from 100 to 30. We could go from 100 to 250 if we multiply by a decimal. If you do not want to multiply by a decimal, then we can divide both of these by 10. Sorry, I'm at my house and my dog decided to chew on her bone right now. So if you hear weird noise in the background, that's what that is. All right. So now we have 3 over 10. And now we can go from 10 to 250 by multiplying by 25. And we can go from 3 to our answer over here by multiplying by 25. And so we get 75 as our answer over here. But that does not answer our question. We want to know how many more total students there were than students that preferred pepperoni. So we still need to subtract 250 minus 75 to get our answer. And we would get 175 students. I'm going to just abbreviate since it's taken me a while to write. So that would be our answer. All right, and then with method 2, first we would subtract 100 because that's our total percentage minus 30 to get us 70%. And 70% is how many more how many more there were total than those who preferred pepperoni. And then from there, we can set up our proportion. So our part over 250 equals 70 over 100. And again, we could multiply by a decimal and have our scale factor be 2.5. Or if you want to keep working with whole numbers, then we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 10 to get 7 over 10. Now we can multiply both by 25. Times 25. And we would get 175 students. And box our answer. All right, our second question asks, a total of 250 students were surveyed. What fraction of the total number of students prefer mushrooms as their favorite topping? So what fraction? So we can set up our proportion to figure out, right now we have mushrooms is 20%. Oops, 20% out of 100 equals some number over 250. So once again, we can either multiply by 2.5 or we can simplify by 10 to get 2/10. And then we can multiply both the numerator and denominator by 25 to get our answer over here. So 2 times 25 equals 50. And our fraction would be 50 over 250. But that fraction is not in its simplest form, so if we were to simplify it, we could simplify both by 50, and we would get 1/5. All right, the last question says a total of 300 students were surveyed. What fraction of the total number of students prefer cheese as their favorite topping? So now we have a new total, 300. So that's going to be our new whole. And again, it's asking for what fraction. So we need to go back up here and see, okay, 35% like cheese. And remember, our percent is always out of 100. Well, now we can easily get from 100 to 300 by multiplying by 3. And then here, times 3. And we get 105. So our fraction is 105 over 300, but that again is not in its simplest form. Oops, 300. So in order to simplify, we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 15, which would get us 7/20. So 7/20 of the students prefer cheese. Students. Once again, I'm going to abbreviate that. So if you notice, when it asks for the fraction here and here, if we had just simplified this fraction, we would still have gotten 1/5, or here we would have still gotten 7/20, because all we're doing when we're finding the number of students is we're creating an equivalent fraction. So here our equivalent fraction gets bigger, but they're still going to simplify down to the same fraction. All right. The next thing that we can do with circle graphs is we can use them to make part-to-part comparisons and equivalents. So up here, these were all part to whole. If you notice, we had our total that we were comparing a part to. Down here, we're going to compare one part to another part. So it says the circle graph shows the percent of automobiles registered in parts of the United States in a recent year. A total of 79 million automobiles were registered in these states. How many more automobiles were registered in Texas than in Florida? So now we're comparing Texas and Florida, and we want to know how many more were in Texas than in Florida. So we could subtract first. So Texas was 23% and Florida is 19%. So 23 minus 19 gives us 4%. So now we set up our proportion. We have 4% over 100 equals some number over our total, which is 79 million. So if you look here, our scale factor, we could divide 100 by 4 to get, divide 100 by 25 to get 4. So our scale factor, remember, would be times 1/25, because division is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So here, to get our answer, we're going to do times 1/25, which is the same thing as dividing by 25. So if we did 79 divided by 25, 25 goes into 79 3 times. We get 75, and we have a remainder of 4. So we're going to keep going. So add a decimal, add a 0, and bring down your 0. Bring up your decimal. 25 goes into 40 one time. No, sorry, my dogs are barking at a cat outside. All right. Add another 0. 25 goes into 156 times. And we have no more remainder. So our answer is 3 16 million. Remember, this was 79 million, so we're going to have 3.16 million more. So don't forget what we're talking about. It's always super important when we're working with word problems to make sure that we always go back and write our units. All right, number 2 says write a ratio that compares the part of automobiles that were registered in New York to the part of automobiles that were registered in California. Express this ratio as a fraction, decimal, and percent, then interpret the ratio's meaning. So if we're going from New York to California, we have a ratio is going to look like New York, because that's what was first, to California. So when we write that as a fraction, we're going to put the New York on top, because again, that's our first number. New York over California. And we can actually just use the percents for this. So New York is 14%. And California is 44%. So as a fraction in simplest form, if we divide both of these by 2, we're going to get 7 over 22. So there's our fraction. Our decimal, if we divide this out, we have, actually go ahead and pause this video and go ahead and start to divide 7 over 22. And when you think you have your decimal, push play and I will share the answer. So once you divided 7 divided by 22, you should have gotten 0 and 318 thousandths, but that 18 is going to be repeating. So it's going to be 0.3 with the 1/8 repeating. And when we change that to a percent, we now have to move, remember, decimal to percent. We're going to move the decimal to the right 2 times. And when we do that, we get 31.8, but if you think about it, this is repeating, so my next number is going to be another 1. So it's going to be 31.81 repeating percent. 31 and 81 hundredths repeating percent. And number 3 says, how many more automobiles were registered in Florida than in New York? So again, we're looking for how many more in Florida than in New York. So we're going to come back up here to the top. Florida is 19%, New York is 14%. So 19 minus 14, we're going to get 5%. So now we can set up our proportion, 5% over 100 equals our part over our whole, which is still going to be that 79 million that they talked about in number 1. So 79. And here we have a relationship between 100 and 5. We could divide 100 by 20 to get to 5. So our scale factor would be 1/20th, because that's the same as dividing by 20. Whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. All right. Take a second to do that. Push pause, and then when you have your answer, push play to check yourself. So when you divide 79 by 20, you're going to get 3.95, or 3 95/100 million. Remember, we're still talking about millions. That's 79 million cars. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you're going to tutorials to ask, and y'all have a great day.